You guys might be familiar with Rodney Reed only because of the national attention that has been garnering over the last several weeks with, of course, the injection of activists like Kim Kardashian, and you have the social media presence of like Rihanna, you have Sean King, and all these other people that have now injected themselves into this case, including Dr. Phil, who recently interviewed Rodney Reed. Now, if you are not familiar with everything that's going on, Rodney Reed, who in 1996 was tried and convicted of the murder of 19-year-old Stacey Stites, was actually set to be executed this Wednesday, November 20th. Ever since then, because of the national attention that is garnered, as well as the millions of signatures on change.org, he has now been granted a state of execution based on some of the newer evidence that the defense and people that have been helping the defense have now been able to come and present. And they've always maintained that he was innocent, okay? Now, a lot of people may not necessarily be familiar with the facts of this or what actually took place, but so I wanted to make sure I did that because I don't want to be one of those, like, let's jump on the bandwagon and support this person, not knowing what exactly happened. And that way you're able to, even if you don't know much about him, that you're able to at least make a better decision about how you may feel about this. And you might not feel anything about this, but let me go ahead and talk a little bit about what happened here. Now, again, in 1996, he was found guilty by an all-white jury of the murder of Stacey Stites. Now, she was living with her fiance, Jimmy Fennell, a Bastrop police officer, and Stites was working at a grocery store 30 miles away from her home. She was scheduled to work at a 3:30 a.m. shift that she never showed up to. Later, her body was found on the side of a road, and she had been raped and strangled. Reed did not become a person of interest in the investigation until the following year when police identified DNA found on Stites' body as his. And at the time, he had been arrested and charged with the kidnapping, beating, and attempted rape and murder of another woman named Linda Schulter. This attack happened 6 months after Stites was actually killed. And because of the similarities between Schulter's case and Stites' case, the police began investigating Reed and found that his DNA on file from another alleged rape matched the DNA found on Stites' body, and he was not prosecuted in either of those attempted rape cases. He has always maintained his innocence and also said that he and Stites had a consensual sexual relationship. Basically, they were messing around, and she was engaged to another man who happened to be a police officer too. The jury found this man guilty. Now, his defense has always maintained his innocence in this, and because they said that the prosecution's case was flawed, including the fact that they never tested the murder weapon, which was a belt used to strangle her. And they also had their timeline was flawed about the time that she was killed. They argue, his legal team argues that Stites was killed hours before authorities were notified of her disappearance, and not in this 2-hour window that the prosecution alleged, a discrepancy which could mean she was actually killed before she had left for work. All right, so there's been a lot of just kind of, shadiness in this case and not knowing. Also, the man that she was engaged to, this Jimmy Fennell, was accused of rape by a woman he detained while working as a police officer, and he pleaded guilty to it. And he pleaded guilty to improper sexual activity with this woman, and he was sentenced to 10 years in prison and just got out about a year ago. Now, it was during this prison sentence that Fennell allegedly confessed to killing Stites. And according to an affidavit filed by Arthur Snow, a member of the Aryan Brotherhood who was in prison with him, he confessed to murdering his fiancée because she was messing with Rodney Reed. Now, that's a lot to take in, I know. Now that you've heard a little bit of that, obviously it's not everything, but you've heard a little bit of that, you have to understand that this man was about to be executed for the murder of Stacey Stites. This coming Wednesday, he has had a stay of execution for the next 120 days, while, again, the Innocence Project, his defense team, presents more evidence, including a new report by a very famous forensic pathologist. You may have heard of Michael Baden, who says he couldn't have possibly killed this woman. Now, after all this has been said here, there are people like Amanda Seals, who I'm going to show you her video in a moment, who says, you know what? She feels like she shouldn't have got on board and supported Rodney Reed. That she is regretful of it because of the other stuff that he has done. And although if you listen to this, it's kind of a long video, so I'm just kind of just let it play. I'm going to let you listen to her words. Although there are some points in what she said that I agree with about people jumping on bandwagons and not knowing all the information about these cases, and they just automatically just run with it like people did with Centoya Reed. Just jumping on it because celebrities tell you to. While I agree with her for some of the stuff that she did say, because this man is not a good dude, however, I don't think he should be executed for something he didn't do. You don't have to support the man in general, but you shouldn't also want this man to be executed for something he actually, I believe, did not do. Now, if they want to keep him in jail, I think that's fine. Because at the end of the day, he did, in fact, rape people. He was never prosecuted for those rapes, though. So in all actuality, because he wasn't prosecuted for those, can they actually keep him in jail? I don't necessarily understand if Kim Kardashian is trying to get this man out of jail altogether, or the fact that, but the fact remains, I don't believe he did this particular crime, and he should not be killed for it. Now, when I saw Amanda Seales post this, a lot of people started jumping on the bandwagon with her. Like, oh, you know what? You're right. We shouldn't have signed this petition. I never jump on stuff like that. So it's so funny how people ride waves. That's a story for another time. And I'm going to get on that when it comes to Colin Kaepernick, because I'm doing a different video on that. But what I'm saying to you is, just because this man has done stuff, which was always out there, the information has always been available. It has never been a secret about what he has done. And if people would just read sometimes and stop taking stuff off of social media, a little sentence that the Shade Room puts out there, or Baller Alert, or wherever you got your information from, you would have known that this man has done other stuff. That does not mean he should be killed, executed for something that people believe he didn't do. I don't think he should walk out of jail, but he has been in jail for over 20 years, right? He really should. He really has been in jail for over 20 years for something he did not do. But the fact remains that he was kind of like, he was a rapist. All right. And I don't dispute that, but he should not be executed for something he didn't do. So I wanted you guys to go ahead and listen to Amanda Seales. It's kind of a long rant, but I think it's worth it. And you might actually agree with everything she says. But at the end of the day, the point remains, always do your research before you jump on the bandwagon of anything. I'll see you guys on the next video.
So here are some things I think is important for us to address about Rodney Reed. 1, the campaign to stay the execution of Rodney Reed and exonerate him was launched by supporters of Rodney Reed who believe him to be innocent of the murder of Stacey Stites. This, I'm going to call it propaganda though, was presented to people like you and me with a very decisive, clear-cut intention to not include the entire bigger picture of Rodney Reed as he presents as a criminal and danger to women. It is imperative that we acknowledge this, because I know that many of us really fancy ourselves just good people. Like, if there's an opportunity to help people, especially like in a very basic way, like signing a petition or donating, like we'll put ourselves to that, no problem. So when the Rodney Reed case was presented to us, and if you're someone like me, you read the materials that were presented with it and you felt, okay, like none of this seems, awry, you went ahead with the support. So it is very, it feels very duplicitous that those who were pushing for this, not just as family, but individuals who fancy themselves activists, were doing so with the knowledge that this person, Rodney Reed, is not just accused of, but has been linked to previous rapes via his DNA being discovered within the victim. And he has been ID'd by a woman who escaped him. And the rape cases that were, and so you're asking yourselves, well, why wasn't he convicted of those? Well, 3 of those cases did not go to trial because he had already been convicted of capital punishment. So essentially he was already on death row, so they didn't bother to try these other cases. Now, I don't know if you're like me. I'm like, well, why does because he's on death row mean that these other cases didn't deserve justice? That is another mystery of our justice system. However, I think it is very important to note, though, that this is somebody who, in 2 cases, one in Wichita Falls and one Stacey Stites in Bastrop, Texas, cited that the reason his semen was found in the body of a person who was raped and killed was because he was having a previous relationship with them. He was having a current relationship with them that, unbeknownst to anybody else, was going on because that person was a white woman and he was a black man. Now, let me tell you about my intuition. I don't know about y'all, but it is very bizarre to me that this nigga loved white women so much that he put his life in danger in order to sleep with these women. Because remember, Stacey Stites was engaged to a police officer at the time. So he would be putting himself in danger. But he was somehow carrying on a relationship with both of these 2 women. And both of these women were raped and murdered. And he was somehow exonerated the first one in Wichita, Texas, in Wichita Falls, because they believed him in the story that this actually was going on under clandestine means because of their racial differences. However, in the Bastrop case, that obviously didn't fly. And the DA says that, you know, she realized that, like, this is a pattern, like he's using the same tactic. When you see things like this, like, it's very, like, alarming for obvious reasons. But what alarms me most, though, is the people who felt like this was not pertinent information that needed to be included in their assertion to the masses that we should rally behind this person. Now, in their point of view, they feel that regardless of whether he committed those crimes or not, he should not be killed. He should not be on death row. That's a different fight. You understand what I'm saying? It's a different fight to say, like, let's fight to get this person who is on death row not killed because we don't believe in the death penalty. That's a different fight than this person should not be killed because they're innocent. I think it's also very important to note that this person has been attached to something as heinous as the rape and assault of a 12-year-old girl, where his semen was allegedly found within her body. These are not things that I feel like you can overlook. And there are people who pushed this clause in front of people like you and me. And now I feel like a dick because I also carried this narrative through thinking I had done research when really I had simply just been presented with very skewed propaganda. And it once again presents us with the quandary of how do you really trust? How do you really operate as a good person? How do you really function in society when even the attempts at honestly trying to bring people to freedom are shady and shitty? And when you find out that the people who have banded with those people to actually help bring this narrative to the internet, when you find out that they knew about this information but felt that it wasn't necessary to be entered into the conversation. Well, I don't know about y'all, but I felt like that was very necessary information to be brought into the conversation. And now that it has been brought into the conversation, I wholly regret lending my name in the defense of this man's freedom from the death penalty. I wouldn't say that I have strong feelings either way in terms of the death penalty when someone is guilty. I will say that when someone is not guilty, I have strong feelings about the death penalty. However, there simply is not enough to exonerate this man. And the fact that he is linked, not accused of, linked, his DNA is linked to several other rapes, that there are women who are alive today to speak about how he raped them. The fact that he was actually had 9 appeals, all of these things were left out. That is incredibly disconcerting to me. Incredibly. And it should be to you. So I just wanted to bring this to your attention because I know that we've seen a lot of people lend their names to this cause, and people of note, whether on a internet or on a entertainment, scale. And it makes me say once again how important it is that we do real research, and that we learn how to do real research, and that we take the time to do real research. And I want to apologize because I feel like I failed my followers by not going as extensively into the research of this person as I should have before I lended my name to supporting him. Because the truth of the matter is that if we are going to say that Bill Cosby had a number of accusers and should be tried in a court of public opinion as well as a court of law, if we're going to say that R. Kelly, same thing, then why are we not applying that same concept to somebody who has not only just been accused of, but has been linked to several rapes? Just because there's a bigger conversation around this idea of some people think that he's innocent and should not die, and some people think that because he's on death row that they don't believe in death row. No, I feel like it is very important to dichotomize those two issues, and I think it is mostly important that when you are presenting to the people things of this nature, of this sensitivity, of this temerity, I'm not sure if I use that word in the right sense, we have to have a certain level of ethics about the wholeness of the picture we're presenting. And so anybody who is not acknowledging that, and who was out here pushing for you all to get behind the state execution and exoneration of this man, is somebody you should question from this point forward in terms of who they are, what they're about, and why you should be listening to them.